everyone, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm. Today we are starting off in the kitchen. We are going to be making some scones, and they are going to be full of nuts, chips, orange, and cranberries, and they are delicious. After we finish baking, we're going to go into the sewing room and we are going to be making our second block in our Snowman block. We have this right here and we're ready for this unit, Snowflake number 2. We've got this one made, so if you haven't seen this one, go back to my previous videos and you will find it. We are making this one today, and then this one is coming up real soon. So stick around if you are interested in making this cute snowflake quilt block or baking up some delicious scones. Thanks for sticking around. Like I said at the intro, we're going to be in 2 places today. We're going to start off in the kitchen though. So you may notice, yeah, we're still Christmas mode here. It is the first week of January and we still have our Christmas tree up and all of our decorations. We just finished celebrating last weekend, the New Year's Eve weekend. And so I have not had a chance to undo all of our decor, but that will be happening soon, hopefully this weekend. That's my plan, but we'll see. We're enjoying it while it's up. Today we are going to be making a scone that just reminds me of winter. It's full of fruits and nuts, and I think you're going to like it. And scones are very similar to biscuits. In fact, this one is very close to a biscuit. A lot of scone recipes use cream and eggs, and so they're a little bit different. This one uses basically the same ingredients that I would add to a biscuit, except we have a lot of add-ins, and of course we shape it differently than a regular biscuit. But this is a simple recipe and it is delicious. So let me show you how to make it. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to take and mix our dry ingredients. And so I've got everything measured out so it will go really quick. We need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I hope all of you had a great holiday. We sure did. We've been really having dreary weather, and today finally we have some beautiful sunshine out, and I think it's just given us this energy that just, okay, we've got sunshine, let's enjoy it. But it is really pretty out. We haven't had snow for a while. We had thunderstorms and rain yesterday, and so that was interesting, but I think we have some snow forecast for this next week, during the week, next week. This is a Friday, and so I think Monday or Tuesday we have some snow forecast. So we'll see what happens. So we have 2 cups of flour in here. In that, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So there's 1 and there's 2. Now you want to make sure your baking powder is fresh, because if it's not, your biscuits or your scones aren't going to be rising. We're also going to be adding a teaspoon or a half a teaspoon of baking soda. And that is because we are going to be adding buttermilk. And buttermilk and baking soda go hand in hand. It just helps that baking soda and that buttermilk do its job. Then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. And this is just like a regular biscuit recipe. You've got your dry ingredients, and then I've just got a pastry cutter here, and I'm just going to whisk those together. Now for the fat in this, we're using butter, and we are using a 1/3 cup of cold butter, and I've just gone ahead and chopped it up so it's a little smaller, but it is a 1/3 cup, and it's just a little over 5 tablespoons for a 1/3 cup. if you are cutting your butter from a stick. And I'm gonna go ahead and add a 1/2 cup of sugar as well. And then I am going to give all of this dry ingredients and the butter a good cutting in. And I want those pieces of butter to be smaller, kind of pea size, small pea size. And that's my oven. It just got heated up. It should be at 425 degrees. It's a hot oven, just like you do for biscuits. So we're just getting this all incorporated. And I will show you what the butter crumbs look like in here. And we want them pretty small. If you have them thicker, it's just going to give a little more butter that's going to kind of pool around on your paper. And we like to have it stick around in our scones, so we want to get it incorporated into smaller pieces. But the butter is sure going to make it taste good. Now, I'm sure you could use shortening or lard as well. That would be perfectly fine. I know when I bake, I use what I have on hand. And if I'm missing something, if there's something I can substitute, I will. I won't go to the grocery store just to get one item. We live too far out to do that. So I think I've got the chunks about right. I know some people use their hands, some people use knives. Whatever method you like to do to cut in the butter is fine. And mine looks like, it kind of looks like cornmeal with a couple of little peas in it. And I'm just making sure it's all stirred up. And I'm using a clear bowl so that you can kind of see inside of it. So there is what it looks like. Just like that. Okay, so there we have our dry ingredients. Now what we want to do is we want to add our liquid ingredients, and we are going to add, I just took 2 oranges, I juiced the oranges. I need a 1/3 cup of orange juice, either that fresh orange juice or you can use bottled or frozen. So a 1/3 cup of orange juice, and this acidity is really going to help that baking soda and baking powder work as well. And I do have a few orange chunks in there from the pulp. Then I also have a 1/3 cup, I'm sorry, that was a 1/4 of a cup of orange juice. And I have a 1/3 cup of buttermilk. So a 1/4 of a cup of orange juice, a 1/3 cup of buttermilk. And we've got that all in. I'm also gonna go ahead and add our orange rind. It says about 2 teaspoons. You know, we like ours pretty orange, and I got quite a bit of rind off of this. I'm just gonna add all of it. If you don't like the orange rind taste, you can leave it out. You don't have to use it. And if you don't want to use orange in these scones, just replace that orange juice with the buttermilk. That would be fine too. And we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And you know me and my vanilla. Whoops. Okay. Now we're gonna take a fork, or we can take a Danish dough hook, and we are just going to mix this together. And it's going to be kind of a shaggy dough. We don't want it to be real smooth like bread. We're just incorporating all that liquid. And sometimes, depending on the weather and how dry it is out and how dry your flour is, you may need to add a little more liquid. We'll just see what happens. And you can certainly just use a fork to do this. Those little orange strips kind of get caught up in the beaters there. And a Danish dough hook is just a solid wire that is used to mix dough that is thicker. And so it's handy to use for biscuits, cornbread, things like that. Oh, I think our texture is perfect. I don't think we need any extra liquid. So I'm gonna set this aside now. And now I'm gonna add some fruit and nuts and some chips. Now you can leave any of these out, add any of these, or if there's something else that you want to add that you think would taste good in here, by all means, give it a try. I'm going to use about 1/2 cup of dried cranberries. And if you have fresh and you're using fresh or frozen, it's okay. It is going to cause the dough to get a little moister as it bakes. And so you might have your dough a little gooier in some places, but it'll still taste really good. I'm also going to add, this is probably 1/3 cup of white chips. And you don't have to add those, but they are really good. And then you want to add 1/2 cup of chopped nuts. I'm just opting to use some slivered almonds. And so those should be good too. Now we're just going to gently incorporate all of those ingredients so that it's dispersed into that dough. And this is smelling really, really good. Just like winter. Okay, and I don't want to overmix. This is not a yeast bread. This is a quick bread. Then we're going to get our cookie sheet, and I have a piece of parchment paper here, and I'm going to get just a little bit of flour. Let me grab that. And so I'm just using this flour to put on my parchment paper. That way it will not be sticky. And you can either divide this up into 2 sections and make 2 sets of scones, and they would be smaller, or if you want larger scones, you can just make 1 big one. And I am just making 1 big one. It's a lot easier. And I am going to put just a little bit of dough or flour right there, just to give it a little bit of dusting so my fingers don't stick to it. That looks good. And then you just kind of want to work it into a circle, and I think you can see that there, can't you? And I've just got a nice little circle. And again, it's not going to be perfectly smooth. It's got lots of fruits and nuts in it. And so you are just going to pat it out to a nice size circle. And let me see what we're going to get. You want this to be probably 1 inch thick if you want nice thick scones. If you like thinner scones, just roll it out thinner. And I like nice thick scones because I like nice tall biscuits. So that is, I'm just kind of checking underneath. Looks good. And this is very rustic. These will taste so good. And I'm making these for after dinner. We're going to have dinner this evening, and I always like to make scones at dinner time, kind of for a dessert or to go along with our meal. Just something to change it up a bit. So I've got this about 1 inch thick. My middle, there, I'll get a little flatter. Sometimes that middle gets a little high. And I would say it's getting close to a 12-inch circle, probably 11 inches or so. And that is perfect. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a sharp knife. Let me grab that. And you might need to put a little flour on it. And we are going to cut it, and you've got all that fruit and nut in there, into wedges. So I usually cut it into 4s first, into quarters. And then I'll take those quarters and cut them again. So I usually do about 8 pieces. If you want to do fewer, they'll just be thinner scones, and that's fine. These will be nice big pieces for, that way 1 per person would be great. Again, if you've got 2, you're going to have smaller circles and you're going to have smaller scones. So I'm just kind of pulling these out just a little bit to give them a little bit of space so they don't melt back together. So this is what I have. right here, okay? Now what I like to do is I like to take a little bit of sugar, and if you have sugar that is the larger grained sugar, that works really nice. And I do have some decorator sugar, and I'm going to use that. I'm also going to take a little cream. You can take milk, or you can even take buttermilk. In fact, this is where my buttermilk was. I'm just going to add that to my cream, to my buttermilk, and I'm just going to brush the tops just lightly so that the sugar that I add will stick. Now I have my oven up to 425 degrees because these are going to bake pretty quickly. These will bake in about 15 minutes. So you're going to have to kind of watch them. You don't want to over bake them, but you certainly don't want to under bake them. Now sometimes my scones, depending on the weather, will be flatter. Sometimes they will be higher. It really just depends, again, on our weather, whether or not the flour had more moisture in it or not. And so this is the sugar. It's got a regular sugar on this side, and I'm just going to put that to give it a little glisten and make it pretty. Now if you like cinnamon and sugar, you could add cinnamon and sugar to the tops, or you could wait and then add a little bit of glaze after you bake them. That would be good too, especially like an orange glaze. That would be really good. But these don't need any jam or jelly. All you might want to put on there is maybe just a little bit of butter, but they are going to be super good. Okay, I think that's good. I have got them all ready, just like that. I do have an insulated sheet, so mine will probably take a little longer, and then my oven does cook at a little bit of a lower temperature. So mine might take more than 15 minutes, but I'm going to put these in and I'll check them around 15 minutes and then decide if they need to stay in a little longer. And I will bring you back when they come out of the oven. And here they are. Mine took 14 minutes and at 425 degrees and with this insulated pan. So be sure you watch your oven to make sure you don't overcook them. I wanted them just a little bit browned, and I've got them just perfect. I would have liked for them to have risen a little bit more, and I think my dough was a little bit wetter than usual, but they're still going to taste really good. And if you think your dough is too moist, just add a little more flour. So let's give one a try. I'll just take this one right here. They spread toward each other, so they took up that little bit of space that I gave them. They smell really good. So there's what it looks like. I smell orange, I smell vanilla, nuts. It smells so good. So let's see here. I am just going to take a little piece and use my hands. And these are fresh out of the oven. Those are so good. I don't know if you remember the orange rolls that we in the 70s used to make. These taste like them with those chips and that orange in there. That orange, I love that taste. I didn't have a cranberry in this one. Let me see if I might have gotten one that doesn't have a cranberry. Oh, there's one. There's one that has lots of cranberries. That is so good. That is just so good. You're gonna like this recipe. You're gonna wanna make it a lot. And it doesn't take but a few minutes to put together, as you saw. These can be frozen, and since it's just Andy and I here, I plan on freezing some, and we can easily pull them out and have them for breakfast or for dessert or for a snack. So I hope you give these a try. I will have the recipe at the end of this video, and you can screenshot it, or if you go to my Facebook page, you can get this recipe in a couple of days. Thank you so much for watching, and stick around if you want to sew. Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we are working on our Snowman block. And this block measures about 22 inches finished, and it's a very large block and it's a fun block to make. If you have watched in some of my previous videos, we've talked about you can make this into a European pillow sham. You can change this block and make several of them and make a runner. You can also put together a quilt by putting several of these blocks together and leaving off the snowflake here, but putting it here, and then the same thing here. So it will go together really quickly because of course you'd only need a few blocks when they're this large. This quilt right here that I've made is a 58 by 69 quilt. I don't know if you can see the snowflakes there. There we go. The light's a little bright. And it has 3 borders. It has a light border right here. Then it has a dark border and then another light border. But you can change that up if you wanted to. It's just a really simple block to make into a quilt. I'm thinking I might make it into a runner at the bottom of a bed. I don't have a whole lot of winter quilts. I have Christmas quilts, but just winter quilts I don't have a lot of. I think my next season that I have quilts for would be Valentine's. So I'd like to have something for January, and I think this one will be nice. Something that I can use either for a runner or I could make a quilt with it, something like that. So anyway, we've made this block, and if you want to see how this block is made, you can go back to our previous video and I'll link it in the description box. And now we're ready for this block. This is Snowflake block number 2. So let me move this aside. So here I have all of the things ready to make this block. In the description box below, you will find the cutting instructions and the layout instructions just like this. It's a free PDF. You do need to have some sort of PDF reader on your device, and that could be Adobe, it could be Chrome or Google Drive. Any of those would be fine. Also, I have a link in the description box. I shared this with you on the former video as well, of the tiles for the letters, and these are your cuts of fabric. And so if you'd like to have the letter tiles to mark your fabric, this snowflake one is going to go perfectly with this snowman block. I always just put mine on cardstock and then laminate them, and they last forever. But if you just want to put them on paper, use them and throw them away, that's perfectly fine too. And of course, in this one, just like our last one, we are going to use some foundation paper, and this is a free download, and I'll give you the link for it. And we're going to be using 2-inch finished square in a square paper. We're only going to need one. So if you downloaded it for your last block, you have plenty to use for this snowflake block. And we're going to use just one, and that is going to be the center right here. So if you've never used one of my patterns before, again, I give you the cutting sizes and things, but I don't write out the instructions. So I give you the fabric that you're needing, background fabric and snowflake fabric. That's the only 2 fabrics we need. I then tell you what sizes to cut, how many, and then a letter to put on there to show which cut it is. That's our identifier. And then, of course, the snowflake. Now, I did write something right here because in this block right here, we are going to be using these parts and these pieces to do some strip piecing. And then, of course, that foundation paper piecing. And so I don't have pieces labeled because they're not actually the pieces that are cut up here. We're going to do something with these larger cuts to turn them into these pieces here. And so I put this snowflake block is pieced together with 4 patch blocks and a square block. Strip piecing and foundation papers are used to make these blocks. In order to piece this block using the cut sizes listed below, you will need to watch the video tutorial that accompanies this pattern. And so I also say 2-inch square in a square foundation paper is recommended. Now, if you know a different way to make your 2-inch foundation or your 2-inch square and a square blocks, then by all means go ahead and do what you use already. But your cut sizes will be different probably. All right, so let's see what we need to do here. I think we've got all of that taken care of. I think we're ready to sew. So what we're going to start off with is, let's just start off with our center block, and that's our square and a square. And if you watched my video for the first snowflake block, you already know how to make it. So you can just fast forward this or skip this part, and I'm going to show how to use the paper to make a square and a square block. Okay, let me show you how to use this foundation paper. It is a free download. Just go into the description box and you can click on that and you can download this for free. And you're going to need 1 square for this block. And when you cut it out, just be sure you don't cut out any of the lines. The dotted lines are our cut lines at the end, so don't cut on those yet. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we need a G and we need our E's. So let's take those pieces and we are going to put this together. Now I'm going to take my G piece and I'm going to put just a little bit of Elmer's washable school glue on the back, just so it will hold it in place. And we are going to be putting it on the back and we're going to be putting it face up, okay? So what we're going to do, and I'm not sticking it down just yet, we are going to look at light and see where those edges line up. We want those edges of our fabric to line up with these outside corner, I guess, dashed lines. So when you look through the window or at one of your lights in your sewing room, you should be able to see that it's lined up with those dotted lines. And this one is, so I'm going to press on it now since I have that glue. And now we are set. So be sure it is centered on there and you can just see the edges touching right there, okay? Now we're going to take these 2 pieces, and these I believe are our E pieces, and we are just going to cut them down the diagonal so that we have 2 sets of triangles. So we have 2 on each side, and we'll just put those together in a pile. And those are going to be our 4 corners, okay? So what we're going to do is turn this over. We're going to take one of our triangles here and we're going to put right sides together. My fabric is a tone on tone, so I have to put the right side down onto the right side of our square here. And then I'm going to put a pin down here. Now what I'm looking for is I want this to be right at the edge of the square. Plus, I want this to be about in the center. So it should be centered right in here. And just eyeball it. You can see it's a little off and it's not going to hurt anything. These are cut big enough that you're going to have plenty of room. So I'm going to put a pin right down here because that will stay out of my presser foot's way when I sew. So then I'm going to turn it over. And I am going to sew on the top of this paper. I'm going to sew from the outside edge across this dark solid line all the way off. And you want to be right on that line. Now, when you do set your machine up, go ahead and shorten your stitch length because it will help tear the paper off a lot easier and your stitches will be more secure. So I'm going to go and sew right on that line. All right, so I have sewn right on that line off the paper in both directions. And so let's turn it over, take out our pin, and we are going to press it back with our fingers. If you want to take it to the iron, you can. I am going to then look and see that it is completely covering that area inside that dotted line there, and it is. We've got plenty of fabric. Okay, the next piece, we're going to go to the opposite side, right sides together. We are going to do the same thing. Our raw edges are going to meet really nicely. This we want to put in the center as best we can. Again, you've got enough fabric that it doesn't have to be exact. And we're going to put a pin down here, and I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew off the paper onto it, off the paper right on that dark line. And we've got our stitch line there. Pull out our pin, finger press it back. It is going off the paper. We've got plenty of fabric there. That looks good. Now, when you're doing this, what makes this so exact is when you are staying right on the line with your stitch. If you're getting off the line, it may turn out a little off, but if you're staying right on the line, you should have a perfect square and a square block. So again, pin in it, flip it over, sewing right there on that line. And it's all sewn. Pull out our pin and flip it back. Check it. Looks good. Okay, our last one, same thing. That looks good. And sewing right on that dark line. And we have our last seam sewn right there. Pull out our pin. And at this point, you can take it and give it a nice press if you'd like. I'll just use my fingers here and do that. And now we get to turn it over. And as you can see, that square looks very nice right there in the middle. But we're going to turn this over, and now we're going to trim it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to trim up on that dotted line. Normally we are sewing on the dotted lines on a lot of this foundation paper, but on this one, this is our cut line. And so just very carefully get it right on that line. Again, that will give you much better accuracy if you are cutting and sewing right on those lines. I also want to remind you, when you print off this paper, there is a 1-inch square on it that you want to measure to make sure that you are printing at 100%, and it's this right here. If your ruler, when placed on here, is not 1-inch square, you need to reprint. Look at your printing settings, and it should say 100%, not fit to page, not 50%. It should say 100%. Okay. So be sure you have that accurate. You don't want to be making a lot of these blocks and then realize you've got it all messed up. So then there's what our perfect square and a square block looks like. As you can see, we have perfect 1/4 inch edges right here. That will give us nice points because our 1/4 inch seam will go right across there and our points won't get cut off. Now we do need to remove the paper, and remember I did suggest to shorten your stitch length because that makes it nice and easy. And you can just pull this off, it's no problem. This paper is a heavier paper, it's just printing paper, than what you usually have on the purchased foundation papers. They usually use a thinner paper. So if you find that you're having difficult with this, you can take, and this is a special pen that's called the foundation piecing water pen, and you can use something like this. You could just take a Q-tip dipped in water and do the same thing, but this is really nice. You just fill it with water and it's reusable over and over again. But you just, with your pen, you just go on the line. You don't even have to work at it. Just like that. And then that softens up that seam line. So when you do tear it, it just pops right off. Not as hard to pull. That paper is softened. Now there is paper that you can purchase for foundation paper if it works in your printing machine. Some printers it might be too thin for, but You can try it out if you think it might work on yours, but I've never had problems with the regular paper, and it's always worked out fine. So there we have our square in a square block. It's nice and perfect, and so that one is finished. Okay, now we are going to be starting our 4-patch blocks, and we're going to need 4 of those, and we're going to do some strip piecing for those. So we need piece I and piece D, and those are long strips. And I overcut these strips so we'll have a little bit extra, but if you think that you need even more extra in case you cut wrong, you can make these as long as you want and just use what you have. Now, if you're doing the whole quilt or something and you're using the same colors for all of your snowflakes, or maybe you're doing some of the snowflakes the same colors, you can make a long strip and just cut off of them. So what I'm doing is I'm lining them up at the edge to edge, and I want to make sure when I sew these they stay edge to edge, because I'm going to be kind of frugal with this fabric, because I think I have enough, if I'm correct, for 1 extra set of squares if I mess up one, and it might be close. So I'm just going to start at my sewing machine and go 1/4 inch down all the way down. And I have those sewn together, and I went ahead and pressed toward the dark side, and that will be fine. So now we need to get a straight edge. Let's just get this one right here, and we need to trim them. As you can see, I came pretty close to being nice and straight on both edges, but it's not perfect, so I'm just going to trim it nice and straight. And I do that by taking a line on my ruler and matching it on that seam right there, and then I look to see if it looks like it's pretty parallel with these edges, and it is. And I'm just going to take a hair off of that just to straighten up my beginning strip. So we're going to cut these in 1.5 inch strips, and I think I'm going to use it this way here. And we're just going to keep the 1.5 inch line here and then lay this on a seam so that it keeps it straight. Sometimes when you're cutting a whole bunch of strips off of a stripped piece, it starts going at a little bit of an angle, so this will help. And just keep checking and making sure that your stitches are, your seams and your lines are perpendicular and parallel, not off to an angle. And we are going to need, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8 of these. All right, so we have this amount plus, I believe, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these pieces. So we don't need one of them. We might mess one up here in a second or find that one of them is cut wrong, and we have that extra in case that happens. But if you were to have one that turned out kind of wonky, you do have an extra one to replace it with. Now we're just going to take these and we're just going to put them so that our blues are diagonal from each other and our backgrounds are diagonal from each other. It doesn't matter which way you line it up, because any way you turn these blocks will make it the same. So I've got diagonals here, 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 and here. And because we pressed it to the dark side, these are going to be lining up and nesting. One seam's going this way, one seam's going this way, and you can just put a pin right in it. And I'm going to go and pin all of these together. Then I'm going to take them all to my sewing machine and I'm just going to chain piece them all the way through, so I'll have all 4 blocks done at the same time. So just 1/4 inch away from this edge. Okay, and since I chain pieced them together, they're still together. I'll just cut them apart. And then I am going to take these to my iron and I'm going to give them a press, and I'm not going to worry about what direction because there are not any seams that they are going to be matching up with. All right, so we've got our 4 patches and our square and a square, and now we're going to strip piece these strips right here that are in the center right there. So we're going to need 2 of the C's, which is what we've cut, and an H. So let's take those and we're going to lay those out. And again, check your fabric. If it's tone on tone, be sure it's face up here. And then I'm going to put that right there in the middle. And what we're going to do is we are going to take this one, put right sides together, match them up so that you are getting all the fabric that you can. And so a 1/4 inch away from that edge, then do the same with this one over here. You'll fold that back, right sides together, so a 1/4 inch on this one, and then I'll bring you right back. And there's what we have when we're finished. I went ahead and pressed toward the blue or the dark fabric. If your background is dark, I would go toward the dark. It just fits if you go toward the snowflake portion, and that's my dark part. And that way I don't see that blue behind my background. So I think that's the way I would do it. Again, if your background is dark, press it toward your dark. These aren't going to meet up with anything. So I'm going to take and do the same thing with this one. I'm going to trim that just so that it's nice and straight. Find a line and put it on your seam. And then just trim that off, and now you have a straight edge to work with. So we're going to cut it at 2.5 inches, and this has a 2.5 inch width. And so again, match up a line, or if you have a 2.5 inch wide ruler, just the edge of it, and we are going to cut. We need 4 of these. I do believe I made enough to maybe have an extra one. Let's see what we did. I can't remember now. 2, 3, yes. So you'll have an extra one if by chance you get it cut wrong. Like sometimes we accidentally only cut 2 inches and then it's like, oh darn. So you've got an extra one right here, and I can go ahead and cut it at 2 inches. Or 2.5 inches, I'm sorry. There we go. So we have an extra one if we have something wrong with one of these. Okay, so there are those blocks. Now let's put together the strips on the outside that have the corners. Now we have piece A, and we need 4 of them in this stack and 4 of them in this stack, because it's important to put your corners in the right corner of your rectangle. So here's what we have, and we are going to be putting these, and these are just our flip and stitch, or our stitch and flip corners. We can also call them snowballed corners, but what we're going to do is put right sides together, and we are going to be putting these in this side. So I can lay all of these out. Let's see if I can get my fingers to work on those. Kind of a dry day today, so. And I'm putting right sides up. Same thing here, right sides up. There we go. And then these are going to go in the upper interior corners. So you're going to need to have 4 of each. So right side down on these corners. Now, if you do not have the seam tape on your bed of your sewing machine, you will want to put a line on each of these, and you can do that before you lay them on the square. And all you do for that is take a pencil or a friction pin, something that won't bleed through, and you're going to go from corner to corner and mark that. And then when you go to stitch on it, you're going to stitch right on that line. Okay, that line right there. But if you have a hard time keeping those together, when we're working with little tiny squares like this, and these are 1-inch squares, it is easy just to put a dot of your school glue on it, right sides together, and this corner right here is going to be trimmed off, so that's okay. So I can do all of these, even if I have the seam tape, it's going to help me. So if you don't have the seam tape, go ahead and do all of your corners with the lines. And if you do have the seam tape, using this glue helps hold it together and they don't move on you when you sew them. This is really handy. And there is other glue that is meant for this purpose. So if you have that special glue that is for holding down fabric like this, you can use that too. But this Elmer's is really cheap and it's easy to get. So I think that's why it's so popular to use right now. All right, so I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I am going to be sewing all of these corners. And on this one here, on this side, the angle will be going like this. You're just cutting off that corner. You're going diagonal like you're cutting off that corner, okay? So make sure all the lines are going this way for these and all of the lines are going this way for these. I'll bring you back when I've got them all sewn on. Okay, and I just did a chain piecing on that, so I'll just cut these apart real quick. Now, when you're pushing these through or guiding them through your sewing machine, sometimes it's a little bit tricky because you're getting your fingers pretty close since they're small blocks. A lot of times I will use a stiletto, and this is a clover, and it is actually an awl, but it works beautifully as a stiletto. It's very sharp, and so it really will grab hold of the fabric. And so when you're sewing it, you can hold it with this, and that way your fingers are not in the way, and it keeps it from going wonky on you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to fold all of these back, flip them back like that, make sure they cover up the background fabric. Then I am going to trim, let's see if I got some scissors here, them 1/4 inch away from that seam that I sewed, and then give them a press. And I am going to press one of the sides, the ones that all go, like you've got 2 different blocks, remember? So the ones that are like this, I can press one direction, and the blocks that are like this, I might press the other direction, because we are going to be putting these together, and that way the seams will go in opposite directions. So I'll bring you right back. All right, so I just stacked them in the 2 piles again, and I pressed one toward the snowflake fabric and one side toward the background fabric, okay? So now we're going to put these 2 together with the snowflake fabric matching, and we are going to match that seam so it nests, and we're going to put a pin in it right there. And I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from this edge, and I'm going to do that with all 4 of these sets. Okay, let's just cut these apart and open them up. And if you've got them sewed correctly and your seams nested nicely, you should have a nice point right there. It should be really neat. Let's see if all of mine came out. Usually there's one or so that doesn't look perfect. This one's just a little bit off. You can't hardly tell. That one looks good. That one looks good. So I'm just going to press these. I think I'm just going to open them up and press them because there's quite a bit of stitching right there with those corners meeting. and we have these strips done. The last unit that we need to make is our half square triangles. And so we are going to be using B and G. So I'm just finger pressing these right now, and I will press these when I do my half square triangles. That way we can get this done. There we go. So let's take our B's and our G's, and we should have, and I've accidentally got too many B's it looks like. Let's see what I have here. We need 4. We only need 2. Wait, hold on. 1, 2. Yeah, we only need 2, so I need to change that on my pattern. Let's see, that was B, and we only need 2. Okay. And that will be correct in the description box below your pattern. So what we're going to do to make a half square triangle is we are just going to take our 2 squares, and they are the same size. We're going to put right sides together, just like this. And this time we are going to draw a line going down the diagonal on each set. But instead of sewing on this line, this time we are going to be stitching a 1/4 inch away on each side. So I'm going to be stitching over here a 1/4 inch away and over here a 1/4 inch away. So I'll bring you back when I have those stitches done. All right, so I just chain piece those. And so now we have a stitch a 1/4 inch away from that center line. And so I am just going to cut on that center line that we drew. If you want to use scissors, you can. And then we are going to open these up and see what we have. So there we have a half square triangle, a half square triangle, there we go, and another half square triangle. Now these triangles need to measure 1.5 inches, I believe. Let me make sure. Yes, 1.5 inches. And so we can put this on a ruler, and this one has a diagonal line right there, and let's see if they are okay. So these are going to be cut larger, and we are going to trim them down. Now if you have any size square ruler that's larger or 1.5 inches squared, you can use that. And so this is a 4.5 inch squared ruler, and I'm going to put the ones right here, and there's a diagonal line right there. I'm going to line it up. Now if I find that these edges right here and right here are nice and straight and they line up good with the center, all I need to do is trim 2 sides. But if they're all messed up, if they're a little ragged, I can scoot it up a little bit, and that way I can see a little bits extra past the 1.5 inch line, a little past the 1.5 inch line, and then I've got a little hanging over here, so I can trim all around. So we'll do these 2 sides first, and then lift it up, take this top corner and put it in the opposite corner, and then lay this back down, and again 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches, and anything that is hanging over, and make sure that line, that diagonal line's going right on your seam. Anything that's hanging over can be trimmed away. So there we go. So now I have a 1.5 inch, get that dog ear off, well, a 1.5 inch half square triangle. So I can go ahead and cut all of these. Now if you have a square up ruler, those are wonderful, and I use mine all the time. And this is the one I've always shared with you. It's the Quilt in a Day 6.5 inch square up ruler, and it goes from 6.5 inch half square triangles all the way down to basically 0. It's marked all the way down. But this one works great. They have newer ones now that have the grooved in edges that cut off the dog ears if you want to do that. And they also have it smaller and then a larger one too, but I find that this is the one that works best. I think the smaller one would probably be great for me too, because those are I usually don't use this for larger half square triangles. Usually under 4 inches is what I use it for. So I think that smaller one would be a little nice to have, just to take up less space. So I need to do 1.5 inches. So I find my 1.5 inch mark right here, and there's a red line. Now the whole numbers are on this side, but we're going with halves right here. And so, and you can do, on this side, you can also do quarters, and let's see, does it do eighths too? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It does eighths too, so you can get eighths as well. And you use this before you open up your square. And so I just put this on 1.5. I line up my 1.5 edge line right on that seam line, and then I cut both sides. And when I do that, I'm getting all 4 sides. And so when I open it up, and also when I do this, I go ahead and at an angle cut this way, but like I said, the newer ones have the grooves in them where you can use that when you cut. And there we have a 1.5 inch half square triangle. So I'll just go ahead and get these other ones real quickly. All right, so I have my 4 half square triangles, and I'm just going to take them and give them a press, and it doesn't matter which direction you press. I'm going to press toward the dark. All right, I have all of my units all sewn together and pressed, and now we're going to lay out this snowflake. So let's set these aside here around the edges, and our center block is our square in a square, and then in the corners we're going to have the 4 patch, I guess, and they're just going to be going like this. If you notice, I'm putting the blue toward the point, just like that. So we have chains going out. Then we're going to put these units with the thin line in them right there. And then these units, we're going to make sure that these points right here are pointing toward the center. I know sometimes it's easy to get them like that. And if you do, you're going to get some arrows, which is a cool looking block, but it's not the way this snowflake block is made. But you certainly could make it that way if you prefer that way. Just make sure all of those points are going toward the center of the block. And then our half square triangles. Now these are going where the blue is inside, or your snowflake fabric is inside. So let's just kind of take a look at that and make sure we've got everything laid out correctly, and I believe we do. Now it's time to assemble this, and we're going to just take a look at this inside first. And this is just a 9 patch, so we can very easily just put right sides together, and none of these have any matching seams. So we don't have to worry about matching seams, but we do want to make sure that they match up on the edges. So if you wanted to, you could put a pin at the end. That way your feed dogs won't pull it through unevenly. But I'm going to go ahead and run all of these 3 blocks right down the side here, 1/4 inch away from the edge. Okay, let's make sure we put these back in the right spot and in the right position. If you tried putting it like this is wrong, because these blue squares need to be going this way. So this must be this piece down here. And then this one right here has the the square in the square. So we know it's going to go there. And then this one right here looks like it goes here. Now I haven't pressed them yet. I'll press them all once I get the strip made. So look at it to make sure you've got it right. And then we're going to do the opposite side, right sides together. And we're just going to sew a 1/4 inch away from that edge. And let's make sure we lay it out correctly again. Those are going out. That has the square and a square in the middle. And this is not right because these are not going out. Flip it. And now we're good. Okay, and you can take a look too and see if your points are good on your square and a square, and mine are. They did not get cut off, so that's great. Now I can just decide how I want to press this. I think I am going to press probably like this, so out, and then these are going to be pressed in. That will be easy there. So toward the thin strips on these, and then out toward the thin strips on these. So just toward this block on all of them. So I'm going to press those and I'll be right back. And they're all pressed. Put them back correctly again. Now all we need to do is match up these seams here and these seams here. So when we put these two together, these are going to nest because one seam's going this way and one's going that way. Put a pin in it. These seams right here nest. So we can do that there. And I'm also going to match up my ends because I like it to match up on my finished block. And if there's an end, if there's a side that's a little looser, like this will close up, but this is a little looser, I'm going to have that toward my feed dogs. And I'm going to sew this one a 1/4 inch away, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So I'll bring you back when they're all pieced together. All right, so there is that center block all finished. Now we just again have a 9 patch, only our patches are not equal sized. We are just going to put these two together, right sides together here, and right sides together here, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, and we don't really have anything that we need to match up. If your side blocks don't match up, go ahead and put them so that they do on the ends. We've got a lot of different stitches in between here, a lot of seams, and so that can cause it not to be the exact same size. And so then after you have it that way, you might want to center this right on that blue line here so that this point is pointing right to the middle, and you can just see that seam right there, that seam, and make sure it's right on top of that middle of that blue or that snowflake portion, and put a pin in it, and that way it will line up nicely. But the other ones, there's no seams to match up. Just make sure that they are not going to scoot on you. So I'm going to finish doing those sides and I'll be right back. And let's lay this out. Again, I have not pressed it. And again, these point in. So make sure you've got that. And we're going to do the same thing over here. Right sides together. Oops. And so a 1/4 inch away. All right, so I have all of these sewn together, and now I have 3 strips left. I pressed this out toward the outside, I guess, edges, and then I pressed these toward the inside. So we have opposite directions, and now we can just nest these seams really easy right here. And also just caution again, always check your block, because I'm looking at mine right now, and what do I see? This right here. So be sure you check to make sure it's the right direction. You don't want to have to take out a whole seam. And believe me, I've done my share of them. In fact, I believe on my practice block, one of them got turned around. So it happens to everyone. Okay, and there's that one. And this is the same. If you have any loose fabric, like this is a little bit loose right here, this is going to be going toward my feed dogs. The only thing that's matching are these seams right here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just try to get that centered on that piece. That way it'll kind of look nice. And then the same thing over here, match these seams. This one here, they nest, and you can tell when your fingers they just flatten out together and they just go perfect together. And then whichever side is loose, I will put toward my feed dogs. So 1/4 inch from this edge and 1/4 inch from this edge. And there we have our finished Snowflake block number 2. Now this block finishes at 8 inches once it's in a quilt, but right now it is measuring 8.5 inches. And if you are not wanting to make this snowman block, these blocks can easily be put into a project or turned into a mug rug or even a pot holder. And you could put several of these together and I think it would make a really cute design. All right, so here is where this one is going to go in our snowman block. And as you see, we do have some other pieces, some sashing that will go in to make this section right here. But we will put that all together when we make that section. And here is the other block that I had made. And I use different fabrics for both of these. And I am just using from my stash. I'm not using a certain line. A lot of these though are laundry basket fabrics because I have a lot of blues and I really like that blue for a winter quilt. So a lot of these will be from laundry basket fabrics. So I think that looks really nice. And our next block that we're going to be making is our snowman, and he's a lot of fun. We'll be having bigger pieces to work with, so it will go nice and quickly. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Also, don't forget to like and share. And if you make any of these things and would like to share them with us, go to Instagram, and I am at Blue Rooster Farm 23, and you can share it with us if you tag us, and we can all see your beautiful projects. So thanks a lot again, and as always, I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you back here soon. Bye-bye.